everyone, welcome back to another video. This video is a little bit different than my other videos that I've been posting. This one, I just wanted to talk to you about learning English. A lot of this information comes from over the years of talking with thousands of students and answering many questions and how do I do this? How should I study English? How long is it going to take me before I can speak perfectly in English? And there's just really are thousands of questions that I get asked all the time. And so I wanted to go over some of the most popular questions that I get asked. So let's do that today. Let's go over some of the most frequently asked questions about learning English. All right, let's get started. The second reason why today's video is special is because I'm going to use this opportunity to talk to you a little bit, maybe give you some advice, maybe help you to understand the process in learning English. The reason why I want to talk about that in today's video is that it's a question that gets asked by many students, and not just a question, but many questions. They ask me, what's the best way to learn English? What's the fastest way to learn English? And there's just so many questions about learning English. So I wanted to go over some of those things with you today. Some are maybe my philosophy that I've learned from teaching thousands of students over the years, or just scientific evidence that can sort of help you to understand a little bit better what it takes to learn a language. So let's get started, and I'm just going to go over a few really common topics with you, okay? So I've read many articles, many discussions, listened to many lectures about the process of learning English or learning any languages. There's some similarities when learning languages or just learning anything, any kind of skill. And some of us wonder, is it easier to learn a language when we're a child compared to an adult? And the answer to that has not really been scientifically proven, but there is something that stands out to me that I notice a lot, being a person that has taught children English and also adults. So I want to use maybe like a memory card as an example, as a metaphor for you to understand this. So when we're young, when we're children, we don't have a lot of responsibilities. Our minds are very open, and we tend to copy what we see and what we hear. So as a child, learning a new language, you could say, is a little bit easier on us because, one, we don't have other things to think about as much as being an adult. We don't have as many responsibilities during the day. So as an adult, we're going to work, we're getting our children ready for school. We're very busy. We're busy all the time, and we have lots of other things to think about. So I think that this is a really big contributing factor to the difference between being a child and learning a language and being an adult and trying to learn a language. One of the big ones. They do say that we have an instinct of communication, or for learning some form of communication when we're younger, because we need to learn to communicate. So as a really young child with no communication skills and learning some sort of original communication skill, it's an instinct for us. However, as adults, we already have formed a communication pattern that is native to us, that we're very used to. And so that trying to learn a secondary form of communication, we tend to analyze or compare to our native language. And I think that adds to the confusion or the difficulty as an adult trying to learn a second language. Another common question that is asked to me by students that are in the basic level, that are just starting and have enough communication to ask me the question, they say, where do I start? What do I do first? And the best answer to that question is to form a foundation, a solid foundation. So that's going to include learning a lot of grammar, a lot of vocabulary. When I say a lot of vocabulary, I don't mean like if we're talking about verbs, I don't mean that you have to learn all of the verbs. But what I mean is learning verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs to be able to form basic sentence structures. And having a really nice base is a good place to start, is the best place to start, in my opinion. I often help students direct them in the right way for solving maybe some of the issues that they can have with learning English. And a lot of times my students say to me they have a lot of trouble expressing themselves, especially when it comes to emotions. They tend to just say happy, 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 sad, 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 and they can't really come up with other words, or they do know them, but they struggle to say those words in a conversation in a very rapid way. Some of my other students say that when they're listening to a native speaker, they understand like 80% of the sentence, or like if the sentence has 10 words in it, they understand 8, but there's always a few words that sort of escape them and they don't have enough time to translate those words in their mind. So as the native speaker is speaking quickly, they just continue to fall further and further behind in the conversation, and sometimes they actually just give up completely and just don't understand at all. So when I do encounter that sort of situation, I often direct my students to study more or focus more on adjectives and adverbs. Why? Two reasons. One, when we're learning English in school, especially in a foreign country, they put a lot of focus on grammar, writing, reading, and not so much into conversation. So what happens is the focus goes into mostly verbs and nouns, maybe some conjunctions, prepositions, but adjectives and adverbs get left out a little bit. So I find that a lot of my foreign students tend to lack extensive knowledge with adjectives and adverbs. So I always suggest looking at common lists of adjectives and adverbs and trying to be very familiar with those. A lot of my students say to me, Jay, I keep practicing and practicing and I'm looking at these words all the time and I know them. But when I go to speak, I just, they don't come out for me. I can't say them. And so my answer to that question is always practice, practice, practice. There's a little bit of a process that happens when we're learning vocabulary, right? First, we don't even know the word. So we need to be able to visually see the word and see how it's written, the spelling of the word. And then we want to understand the meaning of the word, what it means. We need to be able to pronounce it right. So if your pronunciation is wrong with the word, or you struggle with the pronunciation with that word, you're probably going to shy away from that word with your vocabulary. Now, if there are synonyms, other words that are very similar that you like better, most of the time it's okay. You can use that synonym instead if you don't want to use this other adjective or adverb. However, there are some that are very important and very unique, and sometimes you just have to force yourself to learn to say the word properly. Let me give you an example. So when I was studying Spanish and learning to speak Spanish, there was a word that was very important for me to learn, which was air. And I needed to learn to say that in Spanish. And the sound was so difficult for me. The word air in Spanish is aire. I probably still don't say it correct to this day, but I come very close to the proper sound. Now, trying to learn that word, I'm not kidding you, I must have repeated that word at least 50, 60, up to 100 times before I could actually get the sound right. So sometimes you come across these words that are very important for you to have in your vocabulary, and there's no shortcut. You just have to keep practicing, listening to others, copying others, and just trying your best to produce the proper sound. There's probably somewhere close to 1 million words in English vocabulary, and a lot of these words we will never know. And there's a statistic that native speakers use about 3, 4, 5% of all of this vocabulary that's available to them. So you can imagine that's not very much. And it really depends. So for example, for myself, because I teach English and most of my students are high level beginners or mid level intermediate students, my vocabulary stays in a specific range. So I'm not able to use really advanced words on my students because then they just don't understand. Sometimes when I work with more advanced students, I get the opportunity to use some more advanced vocabulary. But my day really consists of using vocabulary that is in the intermediate mid-range level. And that holds true for all people in their life. So depending on where they work. So if they work in a business situation, their vocabulary might be more formal than it is casual. If you work in a situation where you're just working with friends and it's just a casual situation, then of course your vocabulary is going to be a little bit different. So you really need to have a look at where you need to focus with your English. So if you feel like you're okay with your casual English, but you're struggling at work, you're struggling in meetings to understand words and phrases and things, then you should probably focus more on formal English and business English and just maintain your casual English level because it's probably enough. It's probably appropriate. Now, another thing to remember is when you are speaking English, some of you will speak to native speakers, maybe on the phone, in a business situation, maybe when you're on vacation, you're visiting a country where everyone speaks English. But maybe in your own country, you may actually have conversations with other non-native English speakers. So if that's the case, you want to just remember to keep your vocabulary at a not too advanced level. You will also need to keep a steady speaking speed so that the listener can get used to how you speak. And also remember that everyone has a different accent and it's not something that you can instantly adjust to. Imagine, as a teacher in 2022, I met students from 49 different countries, and all of those students have a different accent. So I had to learn to listen to different types of accents, and it wasn't so easy. So when I encounter a student from a country that I've never listened to somebody speak in English before, the sound is new for me and I struggle. I struggle for the first few minutes until I can adjust to the sound. I can figure out maybe their tone, the pitch, the intonation that they use, and then I can start to understand a little bit better. So you need to just be a little bit patient when talking to others from different countries with different accents. Jay, I want to talk like a native speaker. I want to sound like a native speaker. I think what my students really want to say is they want to improve their fluency. So when a student comes to me with this problem and they say, my vocabulary is good, I understand all the grammar, grammatically my sentences are correct, but I just can't seem to produce good fluency. Where I focus when that happens is usually on linking words or transition words. And I'd also like to focus on phrasal verbs, sometimes collocations, idioms. These are often areas that are a little bit more advanced and can help you to really tie your sentences together and you can keep the conversation flowing, especially with linking words. So let me give you an example if you didn't use a linking word. If you wanted to say, I like pizza, you might say, I like pizza. However, I don't like cheese. Now, if you don't know to use a linking word, you might separate those two sentences. And when you separate those two sentences, you become very basic sounding to a native speaker. So that's why it's so important to start to learn linking words, transition words. They help you to keep the conversation going and help you to combine thoughts and sentences together so that you don't make abrupt sentence changes. Jay, I have good vocabulary. I understand grammatically, and I just feel like I'm hitting a wall. I am not improving my English in the same way that I used to. This is very common. This is really common with any language or maybe even any other skill. So when we're learning the basics, our growth is very fast and very rapid, and we feel good because we're learning so much. But as we start to understand all the basics, we start to move into more advanced levels, and things sometimes become a little bit more complicated. We start to analyze things a little bit more so we have a deeper understanding. And that can sometimes come with some frustration. So, what I suggest to my students that are high intermediate looking to move into advanced is to start looking at other areas of English. Start looking at suffixes, start looking at prefixes, start looking at word families. Because once you can start to understand that you can take a word and you can alter it in many different ways in order to make it into a noun or into an adjective or into an adverb, you can start to see that this big group of vocabulary that just seems like, oh my God, there's so many words, you start to narrow that down. And when you encounter a new word, you can sometimes find the root word and have a better understanding of the word and understand it much quicker. This is one of the advantages to when you do move into the advanced area, is that your understanding of what's happening in the process of the language, it happens a lot faster for you. You start to have a more deeper understanding of some of these words. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully, I covered some questions you may have in your mind, and I know that there are many, many more. So if you want, you can always leave a comment in the comment section, and maybe I can post another video with some other questions about the process of learning English or learning a language. And yeah, that's it. So just stay positive, keep practicing, keep moving forward. Rome wasn't built in a day, and just keep that in your mind. Just remember that, and stay persistent and keep at it. All right? I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.